Hello everybody and welcome to All the Mods 7 to the Sky. In the last two episodes I built this lovely fission reactor and spilled nuclear waste on 2 occasions. I also built this fusion reactor. This produces even more energy and is completely customizable. I can increase the injection rate and it will produce even more power paired with this other turbine. And I also made a SPS to actually start producing antimatter from mechanism. Following up on last episode though, I need to set up some stuff in mystical agriculture to actually start progressing a little bit further. And to do so I'm going to be using this crafter tier 3. I am still using it for Project E, but I have a second use for this, and that's to craft all of the essence from mystical agriculture. Yeah, to be able to make this titanium essence. Auto crafting is a little bit confusing with the infusion crystal, so we're going to be using this crafter instead to actually be able to do this. Placing these in like this will allow me to start producing. If I click remember, it will remember these slots so I can take items out, but it will only let that item into that slot. And the same goes for Project E. I just need to reassign these filters, then I can turn this back on. Now when setting the recipes for this, I need to make sure that I set external C, which will mean that any crafting result won't end up in the output and it will go straight back into the inventory of the crafter. I also need to set it so that it uses the master infusion crystal. And for encoding these patterns, they don't need to be a crafting table recipe. They just need to be a processing recipe actually. 4 is the input, but for this one I'm going to be doing 256 as an input. Then it will get 64, what stuff is this? Prudentium essence, 64 Prudentium essence as a product. And then the rest of these are going to be doing a 16 as the output and 64 for the input. The crafts for this Philosopher's Stone is starting to get a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Requiring an insanium coal block, which is a reference, it's going to cost 8,000 Prudentium essence or 32,000 Inferium essence to craft one of them. Okay, so this is to craft a Supremium furnace. This actually is a lot less Inferium essence than I was expecting. Only 4,000. That's 2 of the things for this, for the Philosopher's Fuel on Autocraft. I'm going to actually grab a recipe for this because I'm going to need it eventually. So uranium block I want, antimatter pellets, and antimatter I'm getting that from the antimatter thing from an FTB Industrial Foregoing. Antimatter pellets is just going to be 1 bucket of antimatter and a chemical crystallizer. The uranium block 4x, that's easy enough to make. How many blocks of uranium is this? 6,000 blocks of uranium, right. Eternalist fuel blocks, nice and simple. Then I need a red matter furnace, along with a dark matter furnace recipe. Right, so that should mean that everything is on Autocraft except for the antimatter. Now it's time for me to actually start Pneumaticraft, because that's another mod which I haven't ever been able to share with anyone. So to start Pneumaticraft, I'm going to designate this room over here to be for Pneumaticraft. All you need to do is, I will have to turn off my magnet. Which keybind is it? That one. Yeah, so all you need to do is light a bit of TNT on fire and place blocks of iron I'm going to be using. This will produce a lot of blocks of compressed iron. So this compressed iron blocks can be uncrafted for compressed iron ingots, which we're going to need a fair amount of them. That's why I did this much compressed iron. This is probably going to be enough for the foreseeable future for compressed iron. I've next made some pressure tubes along with one of these air compressors. This also might be a bit of an insane idea to be using insane coal inside this air compressor, but I'm going to. I'm next going to start building this pressure vessel. This is going to be the main machine for crafting in Pneumaticraft using compressed air. also probably a bit unnecessary to use a 3x3 internal, 5x5 external pressure chamber, but I'm going to, just because. I'm going to have the input and output on the top of this pressure chamber. To actually get the compressed air in, I'm going to need one of these pressure chamber valves. This can then be connected using pressure tubes to the air compressor, which I have, which I'm going to be running on insanium cold, because everything about that seems sane to you, and this is probably a bad idea and it's probably going to blow up. Oh, that's a noise which I'm happy to hear. It's been a while since I've played Pneumaticraft. Oh, and the orientation... I'm currently inside the pressure chamber. The orientation for these pressure chamber interfaces is actually important. So that is the blue side, but you can't actually see it because it's open. If I break that, that's the blue side, so that means that it's an input, and this one is set to output to the bottom, and the top one is set to output into the pressure chamber and input from this top block here. Now that's probably a bad idea, but I'm gonna still throw in one piece of insanium cold to see what happens. We'll see how long this lasts for. This is just gonna slowly increase the pressure which is currently inside this pressure chamber. You can see how much air is currently in it, how much volume, so the capacity of compressed air, and the pressure bar is here. Now, I think that it's probably a good idea to go for automation for this air compressor. So you can set this to enable on high signal. That will mean that when this receives a redstone signal, this will turn on. This to actually read a redstone signal based on how much pressure is in this tube, I'm going to be using one of these pressure gauge tube monitors. This should output a redstone signal based on how much air is in the tube, and based on this I can send this into a inverter, which is just a redstone torch, which means that when this gets to a certain threshold it will turn the redstone torch off, turning the air compressor off. I have an idea, let's tick accelerate it, and to be able to actually speed this up I'm going to want to speed it up, so I'm going to need to set up oil refining from Pneumaticraft. It's a pretty involved process, but I'm going to try to explain it as I build it as best as I can. The lubricant is first made in one of these thermo-pneumatic processing plants. This requires compressed air along with a temperature, and to actually produce the lubricant we don't need any compressed air supplied to this. We only need to get the temperature above or equal to 100 degrees Celsius. To actually generate heat, I'm going to be using one of these vortex tubes. This has a hot and cold side. For this application, I only need the hot side to be facing the thermo-pneumatic processing plant. This output is going to be the cold side, which is going to go onto a block of compressed iron. And yes, you can use these as basically a heat pipe. To get the biodiesel for the lubricant, I'm not going to be doing the immersive craft way. I will be doing the Pneumaticraft way, which is plant oil or vegetable oil, which is thermo-pneumatic process. The temperature is above or equal to negative 273 degrees Celsius, meaning that it actually takes any temperature above that. So this is basically something where I don't need to adjust the temperature for it to actually work. It's just the air pressure which is required. I'm also going to be using apples to produce the vegetable oil and the ethanol, since apples are completely passive thanks to the tree farm which I made in, what was that, like episode 3? Honestly, well, this is going to turn into a very long processing chain. Let's start from the beginning and work my way back. So this requires thermo-pneumatic process, compressed air 2 bars, and any seed or crop product. So this first thermo-pneumatic processing plant is going to be set to squish apples into seed oil. And I'm sort of trying to build this in a way that I can expand how many I actually have running at a time. If I need to, I can expand them vertically. So the next one is going to be making, by the looks of it, it will be ethanol. I still need to set up this processing chain so that I can actually start producing yeast. I'm going to need to craft it up using this one first, so let's do that. And remember, I only need to make this yeast culture once. Now I need to set up the production of yeast. My idea for how this works, or how it should work at least, is to use the formation and annihilation planes from Applied Energistics. Okay, it's working. After a little bit of automation, it's working. It's producing yeast for me. Everything is on a, well, it's all timing. You have to time exactly when you want things to actually happen. So I have a storage bus from the mainnet, so mainnet can actually it can see the yeast culture. I'm then using a level emitter based on that. So if it's below 32 buckets, it will, or if it's below or equal to 32 buckets, it will, what will it do? It will turn on a redstone signal when it's below. If it gets over or equal to, then it will turn this whole timer off. This is then going into a 10-second timer. Then wireless link going up to here with a pulse extender for 5 ticks to allow enough time to drop 1 piece of sugar and no more. Then it's also going down here with a 1-second delay, then a 15-tick pulse extender to allow the ME system to come on, place 1 bit of water and let the other one clear it, and it won't place again. It is all about timing. It's producing yeast for me, which I'm then going to be using to produce biodiesel and then lubricant. Scratch that, I had to get this so that it's emitting when levels are above or equal to limit, to actually be able to turn off this timer and stop it from trying to produce more. So you have to have the timer set to pause while redstone's active. You don't have pause while redstone isn't active, unfortunately. With the automated yeast production, I can now set up ethanol production. That's what I'm making. There you go, this is ethanol production. I just need to get one of them regulator valves for this, so that I can actually regulate how much air pressure can go through this vortex tube and therefore control the temperature. Because it's a bit it's a bit hit and miss. I have to connect this, then disconnect it once it gets too hot. Next one is going to be producing biodiesel using the ethanol and the vegetable oil. This actually needs to be made inside a fluid mixer, so I'm going to need to set up the pressure chamber. The automation for the pressure chamber is going to be fairly easy. I'm just going to have an interface going into a chest, extracting into one of them pressure chamber interfaces. That will allow me to extract and insert items inside the pressure chamber. Although the setting for this, I'm going to change it so that it's until primary crafting result is returned. Since the output of this is going to be, it's more difficult to control it based on the blocking mode because I'm using this chest. So waiting until the primary crafting result is returned will fix that. I'm also going to set up one of these advanced demagnetization coils underneath here. This should give me enough range to block anything which is going to be inside the pressure chamber. My magnet won't be able to collect it. Let's give this a try by crafting one of these turbine rotors. Hold on a minute, I actually still need to set the P2Ps to be items to be able to insert them from the pressure chamber back into the pattern provider. There you go. That should be working properly now. So gold goes in, now it's just waiting for the redstone. Yeah, and then it crafts. Then it will send it back to the ME system. So this is the entire processing line. Well, the processing line I've gone to make the lubricant. You could be doing this through oil refining. Having a look at the recipe, you can use regular diesel for this. But I've decided to do it without the use of crude oil, because there's not really a good way to get it apart from bees or the laser drill. I'm also going to need plastic from Pneumaticraft to get these modular expansion cards, which will allow me to limit how much pressure can go through the tubes and fine control how much pressure the air compressors actually produce. I'm going to need plastic and these PCBs, which is just even more plastic. So plastic is going to need to be set up on passive. So I should be getting biodiesel now, which also means that I can start requesting biodiesel for the plastic production. Oh yeah, 3 buckets of molten plastic already. That's what I want to see. So this will just store the molten plastic in this fluid tank. And to convert the plastic into plastic sheets, you need to cool it. So for this to actually work, I need to set this one to only whitelist buckets of molten plastic. That's going to only allow buckets of molten plastic to end up in here. Then this one just needs to filter the actual buckets to then place them back inside this fluid tank. So that should end up sending them back into this tank. Interestingly, it does not allow the buckets to be filled if there's more than one in a stack. I don't know, we'll try it. To actually start cooling this plastic, I'm going to need to place one of these heat frames on this chest, along with a vortex tube, but instead of the hot side going towards the chest, the cold side now needs to be facing the chest to cool the chest down. All the heat frame does is allow any items which are contained in the container to actually be cooled or heated to the required temperature for a transformation to happen. Okay, we're cooling, we're getting down. Okay, now it is actually cooling. And there we are, plastic sheets. That is exactly what I want. Then I'm going to have this to only filter the plastic sheets to pull them out. I will then store it in this lovely oak drawer, which my ME system will then have access to. Negative 176. I'd love to see that. Well, that's the plastic sheets for the module expansion cards. The next thing which I need to take care of is these finished PCBs. So I'm also going to need to use an etching tank to actually be able to produce these unassembled PCBs. So this is something new compared to what I remember Pneumaticraft actually having. And to actually be able to get these PCBs, I need one of these UV light boxes. But this requires a PCB blueprint, which can only be bought by the Amadron tablet. So that's exactly what I'm going to craft with the first bits of plastic from this. Yes, one Amadron tablet. I'm also going to need to use one of these charging stations to actually charge this Amadron tablet with compressed air. Shift right clicking on anything which can store items will set an item chest for this. And doing the same on a fluid tank will allow you to start buying or selling fluids. For this though, all we need is to buy things from it. So I'm just going to get a bunch of emeralds. I can now, if I request... Where is it which I need? Oh yeah, the PCB. I need one of these. Right clicking will actually increase how many orders you do. Shift right clicking will double how much you've actually set. I'm also going to buy from this a load of lubricant because I can. This should spawn an Amadron from somewhere. Oh, there they are. Okay, that's all of the lubricant. Yeah, I think I'm just going to buy the lubricant, actually. We don't really have a need to craft it with the Amadron tablet. I'm going to pick up another thermo-pneumatic processing plant. This one I'm going to set to produce these upgrade modules. Upgrade matrix is what they're called. They're basically required for any of the upgrades from Pneumaticraft. It would be very nice to get some automation for these air compressors set up. I would very much like to be able to just set them up and leave them running. That's why I'm making them upgrade bases. I want to be able to craft these speed upgrades, as these will allow me to produce compressed air at a much more faster rate. Oh yeah, 4 of them. Yes, I do not feel like waiting, Pneumaticraft. These amazing little things, if I shove them inside of here, make this produce more compressed air more faster. So these regulator tubes, this will actually allow me to regulate the gas flow between them. So I can have a high pressure line and a low pressure line. I need to make these circuits now because I want to be able to control this with an interface basically, instead of having to set a redstone signal for them. So, you know, there's a little bit of stuff to go into this. I'm also going to need a fluid called etching acid. This will be used to make PCBs in the future, the early way to produce PCBs at least. There will be a more efficient way to produce them later on, but this is the first way we can actually produce it. This UV box will actually produce these empty PCBs. It needs to have an etched success chance of 100% to guarantee a successful etching process. Otherwise, it will not be guaranteed, and there's a chance for you to not actually get the etched PCB back. Okay, go in the UV box. It's going to take a little bit of time. I'm sure that I can speed this up with the speed upgrades. It will just make it use more compressed air. Yeah, you can see that it's going down now, but it's processing them faster. Once I get the assembly line from Pneumaticraft, producing the unassembled PCBs becomes a lot easier, but this just requires these machines, which is a little bit later. Getting there. It's taking a lot longer the higher the success chance is. There you go. So now this has a 100% chance to etch. From what I understand, if I add more heat to this, it will etch faster. Okay, so increasing the temperature does reduce the etching time process, but it also makes it consume the etching acid, which is not what I want it to do. But I'm sure that I can just accelerate this. Yeah, making all of this stuff is brilliant. There you go, finished PCB, which then means module expansion card, which now should mean that if I place, I need to orient this, one of these regulator tubes. This now means that I can regulate how much air pressure goes inside my vortex tubes. This will result in fine temperature control for all of them. Yeah, so I think the next real big thing for Pneumaticraft is going to be crafting the assembly controller and their respected machines for this. So by the looks of it, I want one of every machine. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is going to require 7 PCBs. So I need to craft up 7 of them before I can actually get this assembly. And while I'm waiting for them PCBs to finish crafting, I could also place the order from the Amadron tablet for the drill and laser assembly program. I made the mistake, which I've made this mistake so many times playing Pneumaticraft, and the mistake is I ordered the laser and the drill program separately. You only need to get the drill and laser program to be able to craft everything using the controller. You don't need the extra 2, which I ended up placing the order on. Crafting up some of these finished PCBs is actually quite quick now. I just throw in 4 speed upgrades in the pressure chamber interface, in both of them. I forget how the assembly controller actually works. It's been a while since I've had to use this. Okay, so it is based on how much air pressure there is. It needs to be just over 4 for it to actually start crafting. Okay, so by the looks of it, I can use this drill and laser pattern and it will craft both types. Cool. Now I can request advanced pressure tubes, the highest tier, which means that I have a rewire to do for the entire pressure system, since these can hold max pressure of 20 bar instead of the regular pressure tubes, which can only store 5 bar. And while I'm waiting for this to craft the pressure tubes, I'm going to set up one of these flux compressors. This will be a substitute to the air compressor. Instead of it running off of charcoal, it will then run off of flux, or redstone flux. One of the mechanics of this though is it's going to actually heat up. And after a lot of tinkering around with this, I decided that the easiest way to actually cool this flux compressor is to use liquid hydrogen from Mechanism, since the temperature of this is negative 252 degrees Celsius, I believe. So it's very cold, and having 4 stacks of this surrounded by the compressed iron blocks, this allows this compressor to actually cool down enough to not lose efficiency when it's running. So I think this is probably a good time to start upgrading some of these air tubes. So I want this to be set to 0.9, as close as I can get it to the 5 bar threshold. Yep, 4.9 is currently being forced into the pressure chamber. So all of this set up, I'm going to request one of these Philosophers Fuel. Oh wait, I can't do that. I need to get the soul lava. To get the soul lava, we are going to have to take another trip into the other. The soul lava should spawn in volcanoes around Y level 80, I believe. So it's just going to take a little bit of time to explore for them, and then hopefully we'll find some. Finally, that took a little bit of time to actually find this. Yeah, this is soul lava. It only spawns in their piglage villages. Right, before I actually request this, I'm going to change this to one of these module expansion cards. So I can set this to emit when higher than, let's say 15 bar. That will force the pressure in this tube to be a lot higher compared to it being at, what was that, like 6 bar. Right, I think I'm ready to actually request this Philosopher's Fuel. Probably going to take a little bit of time to make the Insanium and probably to make that antimatter. While I'm waiting for the Philosopher's Fuel, I will finish upgrading all of these advanced pressure tubes. Oh, there it was. It just finished. Lovely. Philosopher's Fuel, another item checked off the list. A progress update. I have creative essence to do. Then I also have the improbable probability device with the compass, oblivion shard, and pulsating black holes, along with Patrick Star, which I'm going to set up so this is auto-craftable. Dimensional seed, that's just a bunch of blocks which need to be crafted. I'll get that set up at some point. Unobtainium, all the modium alloys, plus nether stars. So I've still got plenty of work to do. I'm gonna finish setting all of these advanced pressure tubes up so that I can leave all of these machines running, and then I'm going to decide exactly what I'm going to do next. Well, I generally can't believe that it's that time again, but it is time to wrap up the episode. I've had a super fun time playing with Pneumaticraft and setting up, hold on, getting stuck, setting up all of this for the electric compressor and just all of the machines, the assembly controller, the pressure chamber, everything's super fun. So as always, I hope you have thoroughly enjoyed watching today's episode as much as I have enjoyed playing, and I hope to see you all again some other time.